Good evening, Crypt Keepers, and welcome to Cryptique. I'm joined as always by the second half, or maybe the first half, of the two-man gang. Ryan, what's up?
Not a whole lot, man. Just enjoying the brisk St. Louis weather. It was -4 when I went out this morning.
Mm-hmm.
And
It is
actually, for the
rough.
first time I can really remember, one of the cars wouldn't start
Mm-hmm.
because of the cold.
Yeah, I was gonna, I don't drive my truck all the time, and so I have to make sure I at least take it out for a spin once a week or so. And I was like, yesterday, I was like, it's not even gonna start. I'm not even gonna try it. It's just
Yeah.
too cold. -22 with the wind chill is what we've got right now.
Yeah. When I woke up, it was -6 with a wind chill of -25.
Oh, so it's warming up.
Yeah. Yeah. Kim's been like, it's not that cold down here because she's from Polo,
Yeah.
about 4 hours north of here, 250-ish miles, something like that. She was showing me pictures that her family was sending her, just feet of snow. And they
Mm-hmm.
live right across from a school and they plow that lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a mountain. I mean, I've
Yeah.
legit gone up there in like March or April and there's still, an 8 foot tall mound of snow because it just takes so long for it all to melt and it's so cold up there. She's like, I wish we lived up there. I was like, in a frozen wasteland, a lifeless
It
wasteland. And she was like, yeah, where it snows.
it does bring back memories of when I was a little kid and I lived in an apartment complex, and they would pile the snow up like that, and we would dig snow caves in it. That was so much
Yeah.
fun.
We would do
And
that in school. And then we get in
mm-hmm.
trouble because the teachers would freak out because we were all they look outside and it's like 30 kids are missing. What's going on? And we're all in
Yeah,
this snow tunnel.
we've developed our own under snow society here in Middle Earth.
Yeah, we're holding elections right now. Could you come back later?
Yeah, it's the Lord of the Flies, and you're out. But yeah. So
Why
anyway,
you enjoying the cold?
man, I like the snow. I really do. I mean, I don't snowboard or anything. We sled. There's a nice little place for us to sled where we can walk to from here. It's like a quarter mile, and uh, it's a lot of fun. We don't have that much snow though. It was just a kind of a thick
Dusting.
dusting, I guess
Yeah.
maybe. But if it's really cold like this and there's a ton of snow, I'm cool with it. But if it's cold like this and there's nothing, it just feels awful. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing redeeming about -22 and no snow and just
Yeah.
gray.
Yeah, it's giving me flashbacks to last year around this time. Like leaving the bar at about 2 a.m. Wind chill's -20. It's like me and one of the girls who works there, and it's like just make sure at least one of our cars starts so we know nobody's trapped.
Right.
But
It's not
no
so
snow,
bad.
no redeeming qualities to it.
Yeah. It's not so bad with my truck because if it will start in the cold, I have no problems just leaving it running to warm up because it's a stick shift. And I know these people
Mm.
that are, the highway or not highway, driveway bandits aren't going to know how to drive a stick shift. But
Yeah.
my car is another thing because I don't really want to leave it out there. I mean, we don't live in a bad area, but there's driveway thefts, fairly often in the nice areas around St. Louis. People just go
Yeah.
out, oh, car's warming up, steal it.
Or steal some stuff out of it, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I
It,
when I was working for my last company, which I never mentioned, but I had to fly a lot. A lot of us had to fly all the time, and I was at a happy hour, and they were all like, "What do you do for your car? Like, if you have to leave your car for a week or two at the airport?" And it's like some of them are like, "I just unlock it so nobody's tempted to break in," or I
mhm.
have this older car that's just a piece of junk that my wife wants me to get rid of, but I drive that one and leave it so nobody cares.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And I was like, I drive a stick.
Hmm.
And one of the guys was like, oh my God, I never thought about that. Like, do younger people know how to drive stick? I was like, I don't think so. Because most of my coworkers who would get in my car to go to lunch would be like, "Oh, I should probably learn how to drive one of these someday." I was like, "Why? Hardly anybody makes them anymore."
Oh, it's important, Ryan. It's
Unless it's an
important.
enthusiast car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the Focus STs, one of my favorite cars out there, are only available in, I think they're
Yeah,
5 speeds. I don't even think they're 6 speeds, but
I don't know.
maybe the
I
newer
was
ones.
considering a WRX for my next car. Kim was like, "You need a family car. You need something with 4 doors." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Let me think about this."
Well, the WRXs, man, you can. The problem is, new ones are so expensive, but used ones have been probably run pretty hard. But
Yeah,
you can find a lot of automatics, and I'm like, why would you buy a WRX automatic? Makes no sense to me. But
the current generation, uh, you can't get like hardly any features unless you get the automatic. It's really
really,
weird.
that seems
Yeah,
so odd.
I mean it's a
And I
rally
know,
car, or it's
right,
based off a rally car.
and I know people are like, oh, well, the new electronic transmissions shift faster than um, a stick shift, and it's like, yeah, but it doesn't give you the control and stuff going into corners. You can use your gears to slow you down, and then when you're slowing down around a corner, like in third gear, and it puts you at like 3,000 RPMs, then you're ready to just rev it right back up
Mhm.
and get going again. So, but
Or if
yeah,
you
that's
have to drive in a hilly area,
yeah.
just put it in a low gear. Because I used to go to Florida a lot. My brother lived down there. My parents lived down there. Um, or even going to Charleston, I drove that manual car to Charleston at least once or twice. And going through the mountains or anything like that, like you don't wear out your brakes, you just put it in the lower gear
Hmm. Absolutely.
instead of your
All
brakes being molten hot and they're
right.
fading because your fluid's boiling. Anyway, yeah, that's a whole other bonus automotive podcast.
All right. Well, you want to tell them what they need to know?
Yeah, please like, share, subscribe, help us out. Just email us at cryptiquepodcast@gmail.com if you have suggestions or feedback, or you just want to say hey. You can see what we're selling at cryptiquepodcaststore.com. You can help us keep the lights on at
Warm us up.
buymeacoffee.com. Warm us up. Yeah, keep the servers warm at buymeacoffee.com/cryptiquepi. And all the rest of the socials will be in the show notes.
For show. What are we talking about tonight?
We are talking about a man who made animal sacrifices, covered his face in tattoos, filed his teeth to sharp points, bathed once a year, claimed he could control the weather,
Which is a great skill. You can put that on a
right?
resume. It will separate you from your competitors.
And was trying to be what people were afraid of. I keep wanting to make like comic book guy jokes from The Simpsons, like bathes once a year, stuff like that. Anyway,
I don't
and
understand the bathing once a year thing. It's like, well, why do it at all? It's like exercising once a year.
yeah, what's the
But
point?
yeah.
Hmm. And this person still managed to snag two fiancées who assisted him with murder. And he also told people that he was the gatekeeper of hell,
Boom.
which maybe that's true. Or at least he was trying to look the part.
Well, his house looked like hell, so
Yeah. So
maybe.
this is the case of Pazuzu Algarad. You want to get into it?
Sure. Pazuzu Algarad, who openly declared himself a Satanist, dedicated his time to macabre rituals within the confines of his residence. His sinister activities included conducting animal sacrifices, indulging in blood rituals, and hosting disturbing orgies. The culmination of his reign of terror only occurred when law enforcement intervened, leading to his arrest and subsequent murder charges, bringing an unsettling chapter to a close. In his early years, a former babysitter painted a seemingly contradictory picture of Pazuzu, labeling him as a good kid despite instances of abusive behavior towards his mother. Shockingly, at the tender age of 8 or 9, his mother had deemed it necessary to place him in a mental hospital. So to
Hmm.
start off, she sees that there's a problem,
Yeah.
by 8 or 9, to the point where she has to, put him in inpatient mental care. And that's pretty scary. If a kid that's that young, we don't have obviously, the records are all sealed and we don't have much information on it, but you would think that that would mean like threatening mom with a weapon, or, saying he's going to hurt himself or somebody else. So that's really young for that.
Yeah.
But upon visiting him, the babysitter's perspective shifted, and she began to believe that it was the mother, not the young Pazuzu, who required psychiatric intervention. Patricia Gillespie, the creator behind the documentary series The Devil You Know, delving into Pazuzu Algarod's life, highlighted the challenges of understanding his true narrative. Algarod proved to be a master of distortion, consistently reshaping stories from his childhood. The skillful manipulation made it difficult for those attempting to unravel the layers of his past, leaving an enigmatic trail that added to the unsettling mystique around him. You know what to do when we say enigmatic.
Frank.
As Gillespie put it, quote, he told people he was from Iraq. He told people his father was some sort of high priest. But people who knew him as a child described him as a little off kilter, a little emotional, things that might indicate the beginning of a mental illness, harming animals, consuming alcohol and drugs at a very early age. End quote. Cynthia, Algarad's mother, openly discussed the early onset of her son's mental health challenges, revealing diagnoses of schizophrenia and agoraphobia that plagued him from a young age. Despite the severity of his condition, Cynthia initially sought psychiatric assistance. She sought psychiatric help for him originally, but as we see so often, financial constraints became a significant barrier to sustaining the necessary mental health support. So she wasn't able to get him everything that he needed. And I think that there would be, you know, there would be a way for her to, keep him locked up if she knew the resources available, if she was able to connect with a social worker, if she had done a little bit more. And I'm not blaming this part of this story on her, but if she had looked into it, I think that she would have been able to find a way to keep him, you know, getting the support that he needed. I don't
Yeah.
know that the state would like turn a 10-year-old away and be like, "Oh, no, you have schizophrenia, but you don't have money, so you're fucked." So
Yeah.
it's kind of a swing and a miss on that one, I think. And that's a real shame, as we'll find out later. But as the funds dwindled, so did Algarod's access to crucial treatment, resulting in a swift deterioration of his mental well-being. In a desperate attempt to cope, Cynthia resorted to buying him alcohol on a daily basis. Does that sound like a good idea?
Not really. My personal thing, my paternal grandpa, um, his father died during the Spanish flu epidemic,
Hmm.
and his stepfather, they were farmers. His stepfather would feed him alcohol as like a little kid, like 4 to like 8 or 9 or whatever, like would just feed him booze to get him drunk. They all thought it was funny, like the farm hands and
Mm,
him. And he had issues his entire life
yeah,
because of it. So
that's pretty.
no, not a good idea. I mean, some people, I don't know. I don't know if any parent actually thinks like that it's fun or funny to give
Yeah.
their kid a little bit of booze. I mean, when you have your older kid, you could give like a sip of wine or something like, here, you can try this or whatever. Like you go
Mm,
to church, you have a little bit of wine there, like you can
mm,
try this or whatever. You can try a little sip of this Bacardi Silver to find out that it's tastes horrific on its own and you probably never want to drink it.
yeah.
But to like do it on a regular basis, yeah, it causes like lifelong problems potentially.
And I think at this point we're talking more of like 14 or 15, but that's still way, 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 way,
Really
way
young.
too young.
Yeah.
And now, we talk about our kind of lack of faith in pharmaceutical companies and how they, make medicine for things that we really don't need,
Mhm.
that have just these terrible side effects and stuff. And we know that there's a lot of research that says, marijuana is good for a lot of things, but I don't think that it's even good for schizophrenia. But when people try and self medicate with alcohol, that is a recipe for disaster. And your
Yeah.
mother's teaching you, oh, well, we can't afford health care. So just, getting drunk every day is a good answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's yeah, it's a really common thing to develop. It's not necessarily that people just like love alcohol so much. It's becomes a coping mechanism or a self-medication thing like you're saying.
In a candid interview, she confessed to deliberately overlooking his engagement in methamphetamine use, citing her deep love for him as a conflicting force against taking stricter measures. And that's really sad too, because I think what we're seeing here is what the babysitter talked about, right? It's the mom that needed help, or she at least needed help as well. We see, situations where people have just kids that are extremely obese, and they say, well, I just love him so much that I just want to give him so much candy
Mm.
and cookies and stuff like that, and it's not healthy. But the intricate dance between a mother's love and the harsh reality of mental health struggles further paints a complex picture of the environment that contributed to Pazuzu's troubled existence. In an interview for The Devil You Know, Cynthia said, quote, he wasn't by any means an angel, but he wasn't a bad person or a boogeyman or whatever phrases people have called him, end quote. But what happened in 2002?
Oh, he changed his name to Pazuzu Illa Algarad, an homage to the Assyrian demon referenced in the movie The Exorcist.
And the
Following the name,
demon we talked about in the Zozo, the Ouija board demon episode. So if you
yeah,
want to know more about that, go back and listen to that.
following the name change, he embarked on a deliberate mission to distance himself from societal norms. Sharpening your teeth and stuff like that will help with that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So this manifested in the extreme physical alterations like the tattoos and the teeth. His outward appearance, along with these claims of who he was and like what his role was as a gatekeeper, created an aura of menace around him. As he asserted that he regularly participated in animal sacrifices and possessed the supernatural ability to control the weather, which I don't know. I guess I need to see more pictures of the guy to see if it would really be menacing.
Oh, he's.
Because I think about the lunatics that I see walking down like Washington Avenue in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of the night, or like the individuals outside like the BP on South Grand
Yeah.
in the middle of the day, like asking if you got any money, got any change. Because you'll hear a lot of interesting theories from them too. But in addition to these behaviors, mental health professionals noted alarming neglect in his personal hygiene. Reports indicate that he bathed infrequently, reportedly no more than once a year, and neglected basic dental care for an extended period. He also justified this neglect by espousing a particular belief that personal hygiene stripped the body of its natural defenses against infection and illness. Interesting theory. He wanted to create like a stank cocoon to protect himself from the outside world. His actions
Yeah.
constituted a blatant rebellion against the values of Clemens and its predominantly Christian residents.
So he's in Clemens, North Carolina, and it's kind of a Bible Belt town.
Yeah.
So he's trying to scare the good Christians away.
Yeah, and he's very much trying to make himself like a Charles Manson type character to just menace, be a menace in this town.
Yeah.
And to that end, Algarad wielded a peculiar charisma that attracted those marginalized by society, drawing them into a world of debauchery and chaos,
Yes.
which is a good album name. World of Debauchery and Chaos.
There you
The
go.
parallel with Manson's ability to captivate and influence outcasts highlights the dangerous allure that this person possessed. His rejection of societal norms and calculated eccentricities not only isolated him, but served as a magnet for those seeking refuge from the mainstream, ultimately fostering a toxic environment of rebellion and depravity. Which I don't know, I'm kind of interested in the kind of person who would follow somebody like that, because we doing this show and probably quite a few of the people listening to this are not super into like normal mainstream societal norms, but we're also not going to stop bathing and sharpen our teeth and all this stuff.
Right.
Like we're working normal jobs and raising families and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we're contributing to society,
Yeah.
and he did not. He contributed, but negatively. This story is going to get real dark as we go ahead. So,
Yeah. So his former friend Nate Anderson would later say that he had a twisted sort of charisma. It's the kind of charisma that isn't going to appeal to everyone, but certain minds are going to be drawn in by that. The misfits, the outcasts, people living on the edge, or people who wanted to live on the edge.
yeah,
Similar to Charles Manson. Yeah. Yeah, wannabes. Similar to Charles Manson, Pazuzu Algarad possessed a magnetic charisma that extended to his relationships with the fairer sex, which is
well,
part of this. I'm not sure how much I want to get
maybe
into.
maybe not part of the fair sex in this case. They had some problems too.
Okay. Yeah, when you said wannabe, have you ever seen a show called Moonlight? It was on, not
No.
Moonlighters, but it was on in the early 2000s, I want to say. It
Mm-mm.
was a vampire show, and it was like a reimagining. I think it only lasted one season, but it was just a reimagining of like what a vampire was and how they would interact in our society. And it might be the first episode or the first like storyline. There are vampire killings in LA,
Okay.
and they're trying to find who it is. And immediately, this vampire, who's a private investigator, realizes this is not a vampire because there's still blood in the body. Like a
Mm-hmm.
vampire would have just drained him. And there's an older vampire that he's friends with who's like, "You got to clean this up, man. We can't have people thinking vampire."
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "No, it's fine." And the older one's like, "No, dude, you're only 100. You've never been chased by a torch-bearing mob. You got to get this figured out." Um, but yeah, he comes back and he tells him like, "No, it's just a human. They're using this like ceremonial thing for sacrifices." And he's like, "What about the blood?" And he goes, "You hit an artery, you're going to get some of that." And he goes, "So you're telling me some wannabe with a Snoop Dogg chalice is out there killing people and drinking the blood?" And he's like, "Yeah, something like that." He's
Wow.
like, "Kill him." And he goes, "There's more than one suspect." And he goes, "Kill them all." That's what I would do.
Terrible.
Yeah. You tell me there's a wannabe out there drinking blood out of a Snoop Dogg chalice. Anyway.
It happens.
Yeah, probably the kind of outcast that would have been attracted by this guy. All right. So back to his lady friends. Notably, Amber Birch and Crystal Matlock were identified as his known fiancés, both of whom were frequent visitors to his unconventional abode, or we might just call it a lair. Amber Birch's involvement took a dark turn when she was later found guilty of second-degree murder in connection with the death of Tommy Dean Welch. The web of Algarad's Freudian slip there. The web of Algarad's influence and its consequences also entangled Crystal Matlock. Accused of assisting in burying Josh Wetzler, Matlock eventually pled guilty to being an accessory after the fact. These relationships were not merely romantic entanglements, but played integral roles in the unfolding tragedy associated with Algarod's House of Horrors. The intertwining narratives of these women highlight the complex dynamics within Algarod's orbit, where his persuasive charm and manipulative influence extended beyond the confines of his own actions, ensnaring those closest to him in criminality and despair. In a 2014 interview, a woman named Bianca Heath said that she stayed at his home for a month in 2005. She claimed that he spoke proudly to her about killing and eating two prostitutes, after which he allegedly claimed he burned their bodies and buried their remains.
And she's still sticking around. Pretty
So do you
scary.
want to, yeah, you want to talk about the house?
Yeah, so let's talk about the house, and if you're watching this on YouTube, we're going to have slides put up throughout this, and you'll get to see exactly what his house looked like. But Pazuzu Algarod's residence at 2749 Knob Hill Drive transcended the conventional notion of a home, evolving into a sinister hub for societal outcasts and misfits. Within the chilling confines of this dwelling, individuals found an open invitation to stay indefinitely, with Algarod exhibiting an utter lack of concern for their actions under his roof. The atmosphere within Pazuzu's house was one of unchecked chaos and lawlessness, where visitors understood that norms held no sway. Peculiar and disturbing activities became common, from urinating on the carpet, engaging in physical altercations, throwing knives, to smashing bottles with reckless abandon. Algarod's indifference to the unfolding anarchy was reflected in the contents of his dishwasher, which reportedly housed an assortment of what could only be described as, quote, serious weapons, adding an unsettling layer to the house's ambiance. Could you imagine, like, hey, all right, well, I'm finished with this glass of water. I'm gonna stick it in the dishwasher. Oh, you've got bloody axes and swords and machetes and guns in there. Okay, well, you do you with your dishwasher, and I'll use mine to clean dishes. Drug use was rampant and carried no judgment in the house. The repertoire of activities inside Algarod's home included self-harm, the gruesome act of drinking the blood of birds, conducting rabbit sacrifices, which I know hits home with you, indulging in copious amounts of drugs, and staging orgies that mirrored scenes from a nightmarish underworld. The physical state of the house mirrored the psychological descent within its walls. We see that a lot, right? Like, you can tell, not everything, but you can tell some things about people and how they keep their house, right? Like, my house is pretty organized and pretty clean. Now, I've got 3 dogs, so if something drops on the floor, I'm not eating it, but they will. But we see when we go, like, a hoarder's home, I think, is a good example, because that's a lot what this looks like, only this is almost all garbage. But when you walk into a hoarder's home, you don't think like, oh, well, they just don't keep house very well. You think, oh my gosh, this person has a serious mental condition and they need help. And that's what this house was like. It was a
Yeah,
dire. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, yeah, you'll find that in a hoarder's house, there's like some underlying cause for it.
Hmm.
There's some kind of trauma in their past where they were without something or whatever. A friend of mine, her mom was a bad hoarder, but she was very organized,
Hmm.
and their basement was basically like a bodega.
Hmm.
There were just shelves of stuff. It was like whatever you needed: soap, clothes,
Yeah.
shower curtains, rugs. Like they just her mother constantly bought stuff and like stocked this area. And when her mother passed away, they brought in like a bunch of friends and kind of let them go through stuff. And then they brought in like local charities and were like, basically, just go shopping. Like
Yeah.
whatever you need, soaps,
Hmm.
clothes, brushes, like all kinds of stuff. It's there. But there's usually some kind of reason.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's not garbage.
Yeah.
It's like something that they think they're going to use.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this house was the opposite. It was
Yeah.
squalid, Ryan. Squalid.
Well, the pictures which I'll have going during the video will. The
Tell the
only house
story.
I've ever seen that came close to it was an abandoned farmhouse I found. Like
Hmm.
years and years ago, I happened to be driving by in my truck, and I was like, "Oh, I never even noticed that there's a little house like way out there in this field that I've never seen anybody at." And
Hmm.
here's like I think there's an old path. I bet I can make it up there with this thing. And I went, and like it's obvious that high schoolers or young college kids or whatever have been partying in there, but like the floors were falling through. There were beer cans everywhere. Like it's clear that people had just been partying there and just left all their trash, but nobody was actively living there. It was literally an abandoned
Right.
house in some
Yeah.
woods that I just happened to be able to see because it was fall and the leaves were starting to fall off.
Yeah. It's we have well, so I work with adults with, disabilities, I guess is probably still the way to say it. Challenges maybe. But we were just playing a game of Family Feud to kill some time. And we
Mhm.
said, What's something that you find in an abandoned house?" And one of the guys was like, "Blood." Like, okay, sure.
Yeah, you've
So,
been watching some True Detective or something.
right. So this this environment, we'll call it, was just garbage, scattered animal carcasses, and blood smeared across the walls. Now, it's one thing to, I don't know if I can even say it like people, I understand that sometimes, people that live in houses like this will like throw their old McDonald's bag down. But if you have, rotting animal carcasses in your house, that is a definite cause for disease. So
Yeah.
it's taken it to a whole new level when you have animal carcasses laying around. The degradation of the living space surpassed even the extremes witnessed on the show Hoarders, where the very concept of cleanliness and order was eclipsed by the overwhelming presence of filth. In Pazuzu Algarod's domain, everything seemed to be engulfed in a haunting chaos, reflecting the depths of depravity and darkness that permeated the very essence of this house of horrors. The ominous atmosphere within Pazuzu's house extended beyond the chaotic activities to the physical embodiment of decay and malevolence. The interior was shrouded in perpetual darkness with an overpowering stench of decay. The property itself became a canvas for the macabre, as satanic messages and pentagrams were meticulously painted all over, leaving an indelible mark of the sinister forces at play. How intense was this horror, Ryan?
It necessitated extreme precautions,
Yes.
which seems like an understatement.
Mhm.
Investigators faced with the gruesome or grotesque scenes unfolding, I guess both of those really work, were
Yeah.
compelled to don hazmat suits, emphasizing the hazardous and repulsive nature of the environment that they were navigating through. The protective gear served as a shield against the physical and psychological toll of probing the depths of this malevolent realm. In the midst of the abject squalor, an eerie juxtaposition emerged when considering Cynthia's room.
His
Within this
mom.
house of night, within this house of nightmares, Cynthia's living quarters stood out as an immaculate sanctuary. Stark contrast to the surrounding chaos. I hadn't realized going through this that he was still living in his family home.
Yeah.
That he had taken over the rest of it, and his mom had this little island of livability.
Yeah.
Um, his peculiar dichotomy added another layer of mystery, hinting at a fragmented semblance of normalcy in a realm dominated by the grotesque. The Vice special, aptly titled The Devil You Know, which we've been talking about through this, provided a chilling glimpse into the investigator's harrowing journey. The revelations painted a haunting picture of a dwelling where darkness reigned, and the very air seemed to carry the weight of malevolence.
And Yeah, I mean, when you smell rotting animal carcasses, presumably some that are, months and years old, yeah,
Mhm.
it's going to smell like malevolence. But we'll tell you all about his crimes after a quick break. Welcome back, Crypt Keepers. You want to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this story takes a chilling turn in October of 2010 when Pazuzu Algarad faced charges related to the discovery of a body on his property. However, this revelation was predated by a series of ominous events. In September of that year, the lifeless body of Joseph Emmerich Chandler was uncovered in Yadkin County. Algarad found himself accused not of committing the murder, but of withholding critical information and providing shelter to a suspect involved in the crime, which seems like something you do. Nicholas Rizzi, implicated in Chandler's demise despite claiming the incident was an accident, faced charges of involuntary manslaughter. His assertion of accidental circumstances led to a subsequent 13-month prison sentence. The unsettling details of this case unveiled a web of concealment and complicity. Did you have something to add?
No, not yet. I'm going to see if we get into it, but then I'll bring it up if we don't.
Okay, you momentarily had a look like
I
you
know.
had an idea.
I do have an idea every now and then.
All right, months before this revelation in February of 2010, attempts to unearth potential remains in Pazuzu's backyard yielded no results. Bloodhounds, specifically trained as cadaver dogs, failed to detect any signs of what was about to be found. Subsequent efforts by the sheriff's department to employ ground penetrating radar were delayed, yet the urgency prevailed, leading to the execution of a search warrant. The search warrant saga took an even darker turn when an unsealed document post the defendant's sentencing exposed another encounter. Pazuzu's mother approached investigators recounting a moment when she heard a gunshot from within the house. Rushing to the source, she allegedly witnessed Amber Birch holding a gun over the lifeless body of Tommy Dean Welch. Despite this revelation, when asked for permission to search the premises, Cynthia denied access.
Mm.
The denial raised questions of probable cause, particularly given the gravity of the witnessed incident.
So
Yeah, you can't
let's
tell the cops that I saw somebody, I heard a gunshot, saw a woman holding a gun over a body in my
right.
house, but you can't come in.
Yeah, that is a big deal in this case because that may have saved a life. It's really sad that they're bound by, hey, we need to have evidence that we can prove in court that this person committed whatever crime, and then also, well, maybe we can't prosecute this person. Maybe, if we feel we have probable cause and we kick the door in, then maybe the judge will say you had no right to go in. So none of this
Yeah.
evidence is admissible, but you could have also saved a life. So what's more important? And
Mhm.
I'm not necessarily blaming the police in this because it's it's a hard decision to make, and I wouldn't want to have to be the one to make that decision because it seems like almost like a damned if you do, damned if you don't. But if you're damned if you do and you can save a life, it's worth it, right? I
Yeah,
mean, it's undeniable that saving a life is more important than being able to prosecute somebody. But it's a
sure.
it's a tough
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah, and this got a little bit more confused because Johnny Law basically believed that Cynthia's motives were to single out Birch for the murder
Mhm.
because Birch had been put in jail for assaulting Cynthia previously, just a night before.
Right.
Cynthia's stance of love and forgiveness towards Birch added another layer to the story and just confused things worse. And yeah, the whole thing was just strange family dynamics, weird coincidences, dishonesty. It just kind of cast this fog over the whole situation that would have been,
Mhm.
I'm sure, really hard to figure out because a lot of what the law has to deal with is motive. You have
Yeah.
to be able to usually prove intent for a lot of this stuff if you're really trying to go after somebody. And like you said, you have to be able to show I had a reason to go in there so I can use what I found. But
Well, you have to be able to prove, you don't have to be able to prove motive. And I think that the justice system is kind of, shying away. It used to be means, motive, and opportunity. You had to prove all three for a person to be convicted. And usually the motive is one of the easiest things to prove.
hmm,
But I think that now they're kind of shying away and saying, well, it doesn't matter why. It just matters that you could and you did. And it doesn't
yeah,
matter why you wanted to kill the person. It just matters that you did.
we did it. Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. All right. So this stuff got even worse when the mother provided another story. In
Yeah.
an interview, she recounted hearing a series of unsettling pops and discovered her son holding a rifle with the lifeless body of Josh Wetzel sprawled on the floor.
Yeah.
Instead of intervening or seeking help, she retreated to her room, contemplating her next move, a move that would haunt the narrative with its callous indifference. Choosing to do nothing, she decided to leave for work, sealing herself in her room and expressing a disturbing resolve of, I'm just going to let them do their thing. This,
Crazy, man. That's
yeah.
crazy. It's like, you know, your son may go to prison for the rest of his life, but you may be able to save his soul if
Well,
you
and somebody
turn
else's
him.
son is dead on your floor.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, and just to go into your room and say, not my circus, not my monkeys. I'm not
Yep.
dealing with this.
Mhm.
So
It's
this
something
admission,
most of us couldn't even fathom, right? I
yeah,
mean, it's a bizarre situation, but we'll go on to talk a little bit more about Cynthia. Go ahead.
yeah, the admission is one of the first times where we see that she is really admitting that she's turning a blind eye to potentially crimes up to murder within her own house.
Hmm.
So when she returned, the body had been moved, and we have another event on October 5th of 2014 when we finally have sort of a reckoning. Both Pazuzu and his fiancee Amber Birch found themselves in handcuffs after skeletal remains were unearthed in their backyard. The victims were identified as Joshua Frederick Wetzler and Tommy Dean Welch, individuals who had mysteriously vanished back in 2009. The gruesome discovery unveiled a timeline of horrors that had unfolded over the years within the confines of this lair. The chilling details, because I like calling it a lair more than
I
a
know.
home or an abode or anything. The
Sure.
chilling details of Algarod's mother's indifference and the subsequent arrests marked a turning point, thrusting the horrors hidden within the house into the glaring light of justice. As the skeletal remains revealed the extent of the atrocities, the statement, "We all made bad choices," echoed, encapsulating the dark legacy left behind by Pazuzu Algarod and those entangled in his web of malevolence.
And I don't think that bad choices can be used to describe this, because a bad choice is, oh, I'm going to have three chili dogs for breakfast. A bad choice is, um, you know, I, there's a lot of things that can be considered a bad choice, but allowing your son and his fiancés and friends to commit murder at your house and not do anything about it, and then calling that a bad choice, shows kind of her, Cynthia, his mother's kind of disconnect with reality as well. I think. I
Yeah.
mean, calling it a bad choice is unacceptable. Could you imagine hearing that if it was your kid and they're like, "Yeah, well, we made a bad choice."
Yeah, yeah, it's just shows like such a detachment from reality.
Yeah.
Like you said, a bad choice is I had a taquito and a Red Bull for breakfast.
Yeah.
Like, or I, yeah, whatever. I decided to follow TikTok trend. Basically, any of them that would be a bad choice.
Yeah.
All right, so back in 2009, in August, uh, Tarina Billings reached out to the sheriff to tell them something. According to her, her father had allegedly witnessed a body in the basement of Pazuzu's house, concealed beneath layers of cat litter and bleach to mask the stench. Alan, the father, initially admitted to assisting in burying body parts in the backyard, but later recanted his statement when confronted by the sheriff's investigator, Detective Foster. During this revelation, Alan did admit that Pazuzu had purportedly shot someone just 3 days earlier. Acting on this disturbing information, Detective Foster visited Pazuzu's home, where the self proclaimed Satanist surprisingly allowed him to conduct a search.
Come on
Authorities,
in.
however, yeah, I mean, it is something that happens a lot on these TV shows. So,
Well, it also does show, well, either he's a complete sociopath, psychopath, whatever you want to call it, and is just like, oh, sure, Satan will protect me if you come in and, look for bodies. Or he just really is that disconnected that, oh, come on in, you won't find anything. I mean, there's satanic stuff everywhere, blood everywhere, rotting carcasses everywhere, animals. Uh, yeah, come on in. There's nothing out of the ordinary here. But what happened?
well, uh, the authorities dismissed the scent of chlorine and cat litter, attributing it to the 15 cats and swimming pool that they had, deeming it unremarkable and overlooking what should have probably been a red flag. The Are you about to say something?
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say, like, okay, so you're allowed in. Come on in, check it out. All right. Well, we can't necessarily find a dead human in here. Okay. I can buy that. I mean, 15 cats, dude, that's insane. You bury somebody under bags of cat litter and bleach. I understand that maybe you can't smell that distinctive smell of human decay. But when you are looking at these slides, which I'm sure you'll be putting up throughout this, can you say, hey, this is unfit for human habitation. We're closing your house down, brother. I don't it doesn't necessarily matter so much that there may or may not be a dead body, but you can't live here. This is not
Yeah.
okay. So,
Yeah. The two dogs that we have, I'm sure I told you they came from a hoarder house. I don't know if I've said it on here before. I probably have mentioned something about it before, but the reason that house was even like discovered to be a problem in the first place was one of the kids was trying to leave.
mhm,
She was like 17 at the time. She was like, I can't live here anymore. She was trying to get somebody to pick her up. Police
mhm,
got called. The police showed up, and immediately they were like, no, nobody can live here. Like,
right.
you go ahead and go with your aunt or whoever came to pick you up. We're going to get like this rescue out to take care of these cats. And then the rescue was like, we don't do dogs. And that's where, one of them that was there knew me and called me. But yeah, as soon as the police showed up for basically an unrelated thing, they're like, oh, no, no, no
Yeah,
people can live in here. So it is pretty bizarre.
weird, man.
So Detective Foster eventually spoke with Stacy Carter, who was Josh Wetzel's, I guess, romantic partner,
Yeah,
because we our notes just refer to her as partner, but yeah, I would assume it's a girlfriend, something like that.
yeah,
Carter said that she had heard from a friend that Pazuzu was responsible for Josh's death, or maybe it was just suspected death, and there was just a disappearance at this time.
yeah.
Um, so there are even more details about Algarod's house or Pazuzu's house. I keep kind of going back and forth. Continued to unfold as a one-time visitor recounted a gruesome video. So they've apparently had video footage taken in this place.
Mm-hmm.
In this footage, Pazuzu was shown wielding a knife and sporting a bloody bandana. The visitor claimed that she was informed about the fate of Joshua Wetzler, alleging that they had trapped him in the basement, subjected him to starvation, shot him, and then gruesomely dismembered him, burying the remains in pieces. Disturbingly, she added that Crystal Matlock seemed to take pride in confessing her involvement with these heinous acts. The autopsy report on Joshua Wetzler revealed the brutal extent of the violence inflicted on him, documenting 3 to 4 gunshot wounds to the head and numerous additional injuries to the torso.
Now, if you think that, okay, so you're a medical examiner
Yeah.
and you can't even tell how many gunshot wounds to the head, that's pretty crazy because, with the science that they have, I mean, they do 3D digital imaging of skulls and bones and stuff like that. And, the technology and techniques that they have and this guy's like, I don't even know, man. It was 3 or 4. It was a lot.
Yeah.
That's rough.
So, in the aftermath of Algarod and Birch's arrest, they eventually included the other fiancee, 28-year-old Crystal Matlock. She faced charges in connection with the death of an individual whose body was discovered, which we talked about before. She played a role in his burial. The first-hand account of the video, coupled with the autopsy findings, kind of helped to flesh out the picture of what was going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And charges against Matlock highlighted the collaborative nature of the atrocities and the shared responsibility of those who were sort of stuck in Algarod's influence.
Yeah.
And, just the depths of depravity and just sort of the nightmarish quality that it would have had to be in this house or stuck in any of this situation, either as a victim or probably as somebody who had stopped in there just to see what all the fuss was about. Can you imagine being somebody who's like, oh, there's this guy. He's like a rebel, man. He's letting
Yeah.
people stay at his house, and there's like always parties going on, and you show up and they're just shitting on the floor, dead animals all over the place, and they're murdering people in the basement.
Well, and
You're
they
like,
just
well,
fought.
this,
They just fought all the time too. Like dudes
yeah,
just threw down. I mean, it's something I don't think most of us can relate to, thankfully, but it is out there. And yeah, I mean, it's just, everything good upside down at this place.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right, so from what we understand, allegedly Algarod killed Wetzler in July of 2009 and buried the body with assistance from Birch.
Mm-hmm.
Birch allegedly killed Welch in October of 2009, and Algarod helped with that burial. Maybe there was some transactional nature to that.
Maybe.
Like, you help me with this one, so I'll help you with this one. Both of these people died as a result of gunshots to the head. Wetzler went missing in 2009, with the remains being found in the backyard. Soon after the remains were found, county housing officials finally deemed the home unfit for human habitation. In April of 2015, the house was demolished, which we have a picture of, so I can throw that up.
Mm-hmm.
Neighbors probably could not be happier that the house was finally gone. So do you
All
want
right.
to tell us a little bit more about what life would have been like under an Algarod's, enthrall? How would you say that? Whatever, I
I
won't
don't
try to
know.
be fancy with it.
The grim saga of Pazuzu Algarad reached its conclusion in the early hours of October 28, 2015, when he was discovered dead in his prison cell at Central Prison in Raleigh, North Carolina. The official ruling was suicide, as Algarad had bled to death from a deep cut on his left arm. The instrument used for his gruesome act remained undisclosed, adding an element of mystery to this narrative. So this guy, and we've seen it like with Epstein and some people, like these people really commit suicide. And so this prison is not really releasing what he used to cut himself. And some people say, oh, he probably used his sharpened teeth and stuff like that, but I think they would say, we found a huge bite mark on his arm. And it sounds to me almost like they're trying to evade some sort of responsibility, like, oh,
Mhm.
well, he said he wanted to shave, so we gave him a razor blade or something like that. But in any case, they were bound by a sealed safekeeping order and refrained from divulging specific details during a press conference. And to me, I just hate to see that. Like, I understand that there's probably secrets the government needs to keep to, you know, keep its citizens, I guess, sane and safe. Like there's certain things that you don't want to get out. You don't want mass hysteria or mass panic. But when you're just saying, I can't say anything, it just really makes it sound suspicious. And I'm not sad that the guy's gone. I think that he was super sick, but if you're put in prison, you have the right to be safe as well. And you have the right to live, and hopefully, at some point, even if you never get out, maybe you can change for the better. Maybe you can help someone else. Maybe you can be studied. And, the psychiatrist can say, well, you know, this this is what contributed to your mental uh, kind of erosion, I guess. And I just hate to see people, just say, well, we're not going to talk about it. We'll let you know in 30 years when everybody that was involved is dead. So that to me is a red flag for the prison system. But in any case, it was revealed that he allegedly attempted to bite into his own arm. But that's just kind of put out there. That's not like an official statement. And like I said, if you bite your own wrist, the prison has nothing to hide, right? The dude's
Yeah.
crazy. We know that. He bit his own arm and died. But I don't know. In any case, so this is interesting to me because we heard about him filing his teeth to points, but in the autopsy report, now there was, damaged teeth, but they didn't say anything about his teeth being filed to points. And that could be kind of, you know, I guess window dressing, like, oh, this guy was crazy and he did this. And somebody else is like, yeah, and he had pointy teeth. Yeah, and he did this and he did that. I don't
Yeah.
think your teeth grow back if you sharpen them to points. Am I wrong about
No.
that?
No, not as far as I'm aware. They don't like regain that girth or anything.
Right. So on March 9th, 2017, Amber Birch, one of Algarad's wives and accomplices, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, armed robbery, and accessory after the fact to murder. The charges stemmed from her, killing of Tommy Dean Welch.
Mhm.
And prosecutors revealed that Birch had shot Welch twice in the head with a .22 caliber rifle as he sat on a couch, cementing her role in the horrifying events. Man, I mean, just the coldness. This guy is, maybe he's not your best friend or whatever, but he's somebody that you've interacted with. He's somebody that's accepted your lifestyle, and you're just going to be like, boom, dead. It's
Mhm.
crazy. Uh, Birch was sentenced to a minimum of 30 years and 8 months in prison with a maximum of 39 years and 2 months. Crystal Matlock, his other wife, if you will, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to accessory after the fact to first-degree murder in June of 2017, and she was sentenced to a minimum of 3 years and 2 months with a maximum of 4 years and 10 months in prison. Although a few years have passed since Pazuzu Algarad cast a shadow on Clemens, the Satan worshiper continues to live on in infamy for his bizarre and horrific crimes in North Carolina. So, Ryan, tell us a little bit about his mental health. And this is, oh gosh, I don't have it in here. Come on. All right. Well, we'll have to add this, but there is a doctor online that analyzed the case. Now, he never met Pazuzu or his wives or accomplices or whatever you want to call them, but he did his best to kind of break this down. So tell us a little bit about that.
So multiple disorders here, most likely a fairly complex situation.
Yeah.
The primary diagnosis includes panic disorder with agoraphobia, alcohol dependence, alcohol withdrawal, and schizotypical personality disorder, or SPD. Closer examination of his mental health history highlights three main elements: anxiety and panic, unusual thoughts and beliefs indicative of SPD, and a significant alcohol consumption pattern likely used to cope with the anxiety and panic associated with SPD.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, one illness causing another.
Mm-hmm.
The manifestations of SPD and Algarod's behavior align with the disorder's 9 symptom criteria. The first criteria involves ideas of reference, where everyday occurrences are attributed special meaning or personal significance, albeit not rising to the level of delusions. This contributes to the paranoia often associated with SPD. The second criteria includes odd beliefs or magical thinking, like they are a gatekeeper. While the third involves unusual perceptual experiences, such as hearing voices or experiencing sensations not grounded in reality. Sounds like every moment in that house would be an experience not grounded in reality.
Yeah.
His behavior, though not reaching the severity of schizophrenia, is influenced by these symptomatic features. The fourth symptom of SPD is odd thought and speech, which likely contributed to his distinctive communication style. The fifth is suspicious or paranoid thoughts, reflective of the pervasive nature of paranoia in individuals with this disorder. Sixth is incongruous or limited effect, impacting emotional expression. Seventh involves odd, eccentric, or peculiar behavior and appearance. Check, check, and check, which is evident in Algarod's reported activities and lifestyle. The eighth criteria, a lack of close friends or confidants, aligns with his limited social interactions beyond first-degree relatives. I mean, it sounds like some of the friends or acquaintances that he had, he'd just killed anyway.
Yeah.
Finally, the ninth symptom of excessive social anxiety mainly relates to paranoid fears and stands out in Algarod's case due to its unrelenting nature, not diminishing with familiarity as seen in typical cases. Overall, his mental health history underscores the complexity of his psychological profile, entwining anxiety, paranormal, whatever. I'm not going to start over. Paranoia and substance dependence. The SPD diagnosis provides a framework for understanding the unusual thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors that defined his disturbing actions. So this case had it all: Satan worship, drugs, orgies, self-harm, murder, mental illness, failed parenting and enabling, and in our opinion, shoddy police work, up to and including the details of Pazuzu's alleged suicide.
All right, so I've got a kind of a list to go through here for final thoughts. So his
Sure.
appearance in hygiene. Now, did he really believe that he was a gatekeeper to hell? That's something that we have to consider, but he certainly tried to make himself look evil. At this time, there was a lot of a lot going on in the Middle East, as there usually is. But he wore what do they call the like the scarf that they kind of put on their head with like a little
um,
headband?
the women wear, or that the men
No,
wear.
that the men wear.
I don't know what that's called.
Well, he
You're
would
talking
try
about the
and
one that looks like the top of a jam jar,
yeah,
the sort of checkered pattern thing.
yeah, exactly.
I don't know how else
Never
to describe it.
Never heard it described that way, but yes, that's exactly it. Uh, so he tried, and if he did or didn't file his teeth down, that would obviously be, a change in his appearance. And I don't know, man. The hygiene thing, I just can't get. I mean, I understand that, there's this theory that we have, or I guess not really a theory, but we have good bacteria on our hands. And we don't want
Mhm.
to get rid of all the good bacteria because that eats some of the, germs and stuff that you might get on your hands. And
Yeah.
I think that maybe that's something that he maybe twisted or just didn't understand, like, oh, that the good bacteria will come back. It's okay to wash your hands, that he maybe took that to the extreme and thought like, well, I'm so dirty that even diseases won't want me, you know? What do you think
Yeah.
about the hygiene thing?
I don't know. I kind of feel like the hygiene thing, it might have just been part of like a backstory he was trying to set up for himself. I feel like the appearance, it's all just stuff to, like we were saying, reject normal
Hmm.
society.
Hmm.
And I don't know that I believe the hygiene thing because for
With
the
with
way he,
him taking it, like the way he did it, or that he took more than one bath a year.
I think he probably took more than one bath a year. Because, I mean, he doesn't look good, but he
Hmm.
doesn't look dirty
Yeah.
in the pictures that we have. Like, you'd think you'd look a little bit dirty or greasy or something if you hadn't bathed in a year.
Oh, that's that
So
high def 360.
I think it's probably all part of that, his story and all that. And his house, I mean, if we want to keep moving along through your list, I think the
Sure.
house thing was probably the same thing, like just part of this overall rejection of society, which to an extent I get. There are certain things where it's like the housing market is screwed. I don't want to participate. Because
Hmm.
I had that thought before, like, why don't Kim and I just go buy like a big RV or something, or like I don't know, one of these tiny houses that you can haul, or just anything that's doesn't feed into like this housing bubble that we're going into.
Hmm.
But it's never gone to like all of society is terrible. I'm going to stop bathing and file my teeth down into points so I can look like Killer Croc from Batman. I don't know.
I think,
I do feel like the house thing is like part of just the lifestyle he was trying. If they're saying that the mother's room was like kind of beautiful and perfect, then maybe that's what he was trying to rebel against by just being like, yeah, just throw shit on the ground. If the dog brings a dead rabbit in, just leave it. Or if you shoot
yeah.
something outside, just bring it in and leave it or whatever.
Well, there's also the fact that it was, I guess, it was the opposite, right? Like maybe her room wasn't immaculate and perfect and everything was in its place and dusted. Maybe it just looked perfect because it was being
By
compared to
comparison.
the, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think his house is representative of what's going on in his brain. If you look at that house and you could peer into his head, I think that's what it looked like inside his head too. But
Hmm.
in any case, let's talk about probable cause. So They were told that the authorities were told that someone was murdered inside this house.
Right. Right.
And they're just like, well, we're going to need more than that. Well, what do you mean you need more than that? Well, you want me, I have to go back and take pictures? You want me to drag the body out for you? I mean,
But
that's,
like that'd be great. Could you just tie it to the hood of your truck like a deer and bring it out here, drive it out here for us?
I mean, this is a case where you should have used probable cause. Now,
Mhm.
eventually they went to the house and he let them in, but if you would have done it, at the first inkling, I believe it would have saved. I think it would have saved Wetzel's life because the first guy they didn't kill in the house. They basically like they they went to a river and they were supposed to go out in like a canoe or a boat or something, and this kid got shot in the back of the head, and then that's when the guy's like, "Oh, it was an accident." Come on, you accidentally shot. I mean, now I know that bullets tend to find people, right? Like we hear about drive-by shootings and you never hit the target. It's always a baby in the third floor nursery or,
Mm,
someone walking with a stroller or something like that. But I mean, yeah, just no, we accidentally shot him in the back of the head and then
yeah.
accidentally again. And, they could have saved a life. I mean, if someone if someone tells me, hey, there's, comes running out of their house and they're like, oh my God, my baby's not breathing. My baby's not breathing. I need help. I'm not going to be like, well, I don't know. I'm going to need some more evidence before I go and try and do infant CPR. Could you
Hmm.
take a picture of the baby? Bring it out here and let me see that the baby, you know what I mean? No, you're going to run into the house and try and save the baby. And
Yeah.
they didn't do that.
Yeah. That's a little weird. It's more than a little bit weird.
So I think that there has to be a little bit of blame placed on the police department's decision not to act on that probable cause. But let's move on to Cynthia. Do you think that Cynthia should have done some time? Because I don't think we got into that, but she didn't do any time.
I
So,
don't know. I don't know that I totally understand her um, sort of role in all of it.
mhm. It was unclear in the research, like, did she spend, like normal people, we work for 8 hours, maybe we spend a half hour drive to and from work. We maybe go out to dinner, grocery shopping, whatever, but spend, at least 12 hours a day in your house.
Yeah.
It's possible that, she was out of the house as much as possible, which would make sense. But she said what she saw. And
Yeah.
it wasn't, oh, I didn't see anything. I mean, I heard a pop, but I didn't know what happened. No, she knew exactly what happened and just let them do their thing.
Yeah. Yeah. She probably should have actually at least some kind of accessory after the fact sort of thing because she was essentially hiding it. She was just
Right.
saying, "This is not my problem. I'm not
Mhm.
going to let anybody in here to look at anything. I'm just going to ignore it and sweep it under the rug in a way."
And if she would have said, man, I was terrified. I was terrified. They told me they were going to kill me if I said anything. I could
Yeah.
have some compassion for that. And I would probably have believed that. But she never said that. She just said,
Right.
whatever. They're just kids being kids. Did you need some more alcohol, Pazuzu? you know, I mean, she should have been charged, and I don't know what the statute of limitations is, but for the things she admitted, yeah, I bought a 14 and 15-year-old alcohol every day. Um, couldn't you at least get her for contributing to the delinquency of a minor? Because, she has to pay for something. And I don't know if it was the fact that there was this dichotomy, like if she had looked like him and had the same kind of room or had a drug problem or something, maybe she would have been treated different. But I think that because she was like, oh, I'm just, I was kind of a prisoner in my own home, and look at me, I'm a good person, and I take showers almost every day, and uh,
Mhm.
that maybe they saw her as more of a victim than she really was, because she has a
Yeah.
huge role to play in all this from the
Yeah,
get-go.
that's kind of what I was thinking throughout this is maybe they look at her as sort of a victim because she was kind of trapped in there. She might have felt like ignoring it was the only option, or that to call attention to it or allow the police in would have put her in danger.
Yeah.
I don't
It's
know. That's my thought.
yeah. So the murders were brutal and overkill. I mean, you don't, if you're just trying to end somebody's life, you don't shoot them 4 times in the head. And it was just a brutal way to die. The way that the corpses were treated after death, I know that, some people say, well, they're dead, it doesn't really matter. But to me, it does. I mean, I don't want to be drawn and quartered and buried in pieces in somebody's backyard and treated like the garbage that's spread throughout the house. And I think that that shows a complete lack of regard for human life. And when you have a complete lack of regard for human life, I don't know if that can be rehabilitated,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, same,
Do you
same.
think do you think people were under his spell, or do you think that these accomplices were just accomplices? Like, yeah, well, we'll help with this, or do you think they were, like we talk about Manson and how his followers shaved their heads and carved Nazi signs into their foreheads and then like crawled on their hands and knees for blocks to get to the courthouse. I don't feel like these women were like manipulated and under his spell. I think they were complicit with everything.
Yeah, I do too. Especially since we have sources saying that they were talking about what they had done with Pride.
Mhm.
It seems like it's not so much of a spell as he's proposing this alternative lifestyle, we can call it, that was very maybe freeing and they were just into it for a while. And maybe they bought into this stuff that like what is bad is good.
Yeah.
So they just went with it. I mean, that's what it seems like to me. The spell would have been having them live in this environment where the real world is feels like it's miles away, even though
Yeah.
it's right outside the door.
Yeah. And then we've got mental health. I think that it's 100% clear that Pazuzu was suffering from multiple mental health issues and needed a lot of help. And that's where it goes
Yeah,
back to his mother. But
yeah, yeah. It brings me right back to what you were talking about at the very beginning of this. That if he had had the treatment that he probably needed as a kid and it continued, I mean, these two people would still be alive. These two women might not have been, turned to this kind of life.
mhm,
We might not be talking about this at all. He might have just been rehabilitated and come out, totally, able to contribute to society with ways to either the issues resolved or a coping mechanism that worked other than alcohol.
yeah.
And I don't know.
Well,
It's
and
it's scary to think that there are people like that who need treatment who
mhm,
can't get it. And
yeah,
there are so many examples. I mean, that's what the movie Joker was about basically.
yeah,
It's like what happens when society basically completely abandons somebody who needs help.
mhm,
I mean, I just saw uh God, what was it on like Channel 4 last night? I think I was just flipping through the antenna. I was looking for something on,
mhm,
and they were doing a story about how parts of Missouri don't have childcare.
mhm,
And it's not that there's no way to pay for it. It's that there are no providers in certain parts, like more rural outside of the
Right.
St. Louis area, I would think. But because, of course, a metro area of like 3.5 or 4 million people is going to have childcare. But when you get into some of these smaller areas, yeah, you're probably not going to have it. And what do you do if you're in? I mean, I don't know how big Clemens is. Maybe they don't have the resources to commit to helping people. And if they're like, it's just a kid, he's acting out, but what are you going to do?
Yeah. And I don't, I don't want to like push big pharma. Obviously, I think if you've heard the shows, I'm pretty anti, but I'm anti for like, oh, my skin's a little itchy, so I take this pill and I'm not talking about any specific illness. So I'm just using this as an example. Um, so I take this pill and then it's got all these side effects. So I have to take this pill for all these side effects. And then there's more side effects that I have to take more pill. But if you think you're the gatekeeper to hell and you can change the weather and you're killing people, yeah, being put on some heavy meds that may dumb you down and slow you down and, um, affect you in ways that you're not super thrilled with, that's what these heavy meds are for, to keep someone like him from killing people.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't, it just either wasn't available. There, I think that it's kind of a defense mechanism too, to be like, oh, well, we didn't have the money. Well, you had money to buy him $20 of alcohol every night. I mean, you had money for that. You apparently didn't look too deep to try and find care because, like I said, you just hook up with a social worker and take it from there. But it's not like she said, oh, well, I tried this and it didn't work and I couldn't get funding for this and they turned him away here. It was like, well, we just couldn't afford it, so I just got him liquor. And
Yeah.
that's not okay.
Yeah.
In any case, I guess that's all we've got for you tonight, Crypt Keepers. Ryan, you want to run through just real quick what they need to know?
Yeah, please like, subscribe, all that stuff. Share the show with somebody you think will like it. That is still, of course, the best way to help us spread. You can email us at cryptiquepodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Anything. Jokes. Actually, I'd love some paranormal jokes, some ghost jokes, something like that. Some like, apparently it's mainly a St. Louis thing, but at Halloween here, when kids trick or treat, they're actually supposed to do a trick or tell a joke or something like that to earn their treat, which it's trick or treat. I thought that was what the name meant. Like you do the one for the other, but I don't know. Maybe it's like you give us a treat or we're going to play some trick on you. Anyway, give us your Halloween joke. Send us a lame Halloween joke. We'd like something like that. It'd be a nice way to lighten up some of these episodes, to read some user provided stuff for sure. Listener, sorry, my coder brain. Find our designs over at cryptiquepodcaststore.com, and you can help us keep the lights on and the servers warm at buymeacoffee.com/cryptiquepi.
And remember, the next time your neighbor pisses you off, just be glad it's not Pazuzu. He made Rick James look Amish. Good evening, Crypt Keepers.